Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Jedi, Sith, Mandalorians, everything in between, to another exciting edition of the new Force Order
For life.
podcast, a Star Wars podcast by us, three of the scruffiest nerf herders in the galaxy far, far away, aka the fans, brought to you, the fans. I am 1/3 of the new Force Order, 1/3 of your hosts. I am a professional wrestler, multi-time champion in a galaxy far, far away. I am the Greek god Papadon, aka GGP. Alongside with me, I have a on-call medical droid who's a thunder-stealing, toy-collecting, witty individual who's running around the ER right now, saving lives and throwing people in back to tanks, aka Dr. Destroyo. He's not going to be able to sign in because he's too busy running around. It's okay.
I can sign in. Don't worry.
Okay, then sign in. And
Spiro goes first. I don't go first.
okay, and then we have a malicious, vicious Sith Lord who believes Revan is canon but is delusional. Boy, smarten up the fans.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am the Dark Lord of the podcast, the Sith Ari, the Rampaging Reverend Kiss, the Butcher, your boy Spiro, aka Darth Spiridon.
And I am smarter than 21B, more technical than FX7, the god of stealing thunder. And the man who unfortunately will be not so joining you guys tonight on the podcast because I'm stuck slaving at work fighting the coronavirus, which, by the way, does exist. Dr. Destroyo, Alex Arroyo, non-conspiracy believing theorist.
And alongside with us tonight, we have the honor of having a author extraordinaire. He has done many fascinating works pertaining to a galaxy far, far away. He is none other than the infamous John Jackson Miller.
Hey, glad to be here. I guess I should have come up with a wrestling name if I was going to do this. that's something for the intro.
All right, here we go. Coming to you live now from the Sportatorium at TaTOYine. It is the everlasting wordsmith extraordinaire, jumping John Jackson Miller, Triple JM.
Woo!
There we go. Nice. Welcome to the show, John. Thank you for coming on.
Glad to be here. I told you before I came on, I had exactly one wrestling story in my repertoire, and that's I grew up in Memphis, so I ended up going. I went to the same comic shop with Jerry Lawler, so
Wow.
he used to buy Conan comics, and so he'd be going to that comic shop, and of course back then we, as a kid, Saturday mornings they had on TV, Lance Russell and Dave Brown would do the wrestling show, and it was Jerry Lawler and Jimmy Hart and Bill Dundee and I think Austin Idol later on. And nowadays I see Jerry at every fifth convention I go to, so it was just sort of surreal back then seeing him at the comic shop. That was really cool though.
Yeah, I've bumped into Jerry a couple times on a few shows. Very nice guy, great artist. I also draw comic books myself. I like to draw, but we were comparing art, and he was showing me stuff that he was doing. He big fan of Batman 66, and he was showing me some drawings that he was doing. Very nice guy. Have you ever seen the documentary Memphis Heat?
I have not.
Oh, you would love it. It's all about Memphis wrestling from back in the day and how crazy the fans were. It is phenomenal. If you get a chance to check it out.
They would just wreck the TV studio. I mean, that was what was
when it was real.
I can't say that I watched too much of it because again, it was Saturday at noon, and if you're a kid back in those days, you were finding something to do outside most of the time. But it was really a circus that they were putting on there, and of course, we didn't know anything about WWE or WWF or anything like that. Hey, that stuff that would come on later on. It was just very much a homegrown thing at the time, just with the guys on the local circuit. So Yeah, it's interesting. And when I ran into him the first time, he was running for at a convention. He was actually running for mayor of Memphis at the time, and he just made sure I let my folks know who were living back in town at the time. Is to make sure they vote for me. So like, I don't think he won, but anyway.
Oh, you know what? I think he's doing okay financially. So
Yeah.
I mean, he is the king, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Anyhow, all right. First and foremost, John, welcome to the new Force Order. What we do, we get this out the door right away with all our guests. We ask them one couple of questions. It's a two-sided question. One, basically, what is your first memories of Star Wars, and is it the same reason why you fell in love with it? If not, when did you fall in love with Star Wars?
Star Wars came out when I was 9 years old, and again back in Memphis, it only debuted in two theaters. Actually, it was one theater to begin with, and so nobody was able to get into the place. This is back in the days before you had multiplexes. The biggest theater we had was 4 screens. There was just no way to get in there. So the other kids were getting into the movie long before I was, or got into it. I remember the little kid at the end of the street, was talking about the villain, and she kept saying Darth Vader, but I could swear she meant Dark Invader. I said no. Darth Vader isn't a name. It's not a name. But we kept trying to get in, and my sister took me several times to the local theater. I grew up about 3 blocks away from Graceland, and the local theater was one that Elvis Presley would actually see his movies in, because it was just down the street from Graceland, and in fact. Star Wars was one of the last movies he saw in '77 in that theater, because he would have them close the theater down at night, and then they'd show him the movies. We finally got in, and so when I wrote the book Kenobi a few years ago, that's back there on the wall back there. I dedicated the novel to my sister for making sure that her kid brother got in to see the movie, and
That's awesome.
so what followed then is I'm getting the comics and the comic books and the action figures and the novels and everything. Actually, comics, come to think of it, comics I was exposed to even before seeing the movie itself, because both the novel and the comics started, or at least the novel came out in December of '76. The comic started in March of '77, and then the movie came out in May of '77. So even before I got in to see the movie, I had read the comic book adaptation of what happens in the movie, and so I've always had that connection too. That Star Wars has always been kind of a multimedia thing for me. I mean, it was a comics thing for me before it was a movie thing, and then before it was a toy thing and a novel thing and everything else.
Yeah, they make sure to spread it all out across every form of medium. Do you find that to be a little frustrating at times?
Only now it's a different age. Back then, nobody pretended that what happened in the comic books had any connection feeding back to the movie, or the what happened in the novels would be reflected in the movie. I mean, there have been tie-in novels, tie-in comic books. The first tie-in novel is really probably the Lone Ranger back in the 30s, which tied into the radio show. And back even then, even though there was the same person writing the Lone Ranger comics, the Lone Ranger novels, that was writing the TV, the radio show rather, nobody pretended that what you heard, or rather what you saw in the books, was going to have any bearing on what happened in the next episode of the radio show. So, even in all the Star Trek novels and all the various novels that are coming out in the 60s and 70s and 80s, there was always a sense that that stuff was kind of off in its own little universe. It was not canon, if you want to use a really, really overused phrase. It was not a thing, and so there was a certain amount of freedom with it. I can get into how the expanded universe started and everything, as part of this, but when you are dealing with the media properties today, and Star Wars has a lot to do with why this is the way it is. Now people understand that the movies come out once every year or 2 years. The TV shows come out, once every week or so when they're running. But if you want to have another way to actually have content shoved at people on a regular basis and keep the universe rolling, you've got all the novels and you've got all the books. And so there's now a bit more of a impulse to make those things count, make them interact, make them work together. My most recent novel is actually a different universe, Star Trek, a book called Star Trek Discovery: The Enterprise War, and the novel that I just wrote is another Discovery novel coming out this summer called Die Standing. And with both of these things, they tie in directly with the TV show that's streaming on CBS's All Access service. So I have had conversations in developing these books with people in the writer's room on the TV show to make sure that what I'm doing connects, doesn't conflict, that it builds on the universe. And then I also am getting some chances here and there to drop things into the books that people haven't seen yet, that people don't know about yet, that will show up, in the TV show or someplace later on. Again, that's really cool. It's also really complicated. There's a reason why, I mentioned before the Star Wars adaptation of A New Hope. That came out in December 76. That came out 5 months before the movie, in part because George Lucas wanted to communicate that, hey, this was real, honest science fiction. It's legitimate. It's a big thing. He wanted to build up, as you say, the excitement for it. The novelization for Episode 9 is coming out next month.
Yeah.
So it's 3 months after the movie came out. And why is that? It's in part because, and this is another way that's a different world, it's in part because two things, really. One is that adaptations used to be a big deal because we didn't have VCRs. We didn't have DVD players. We didn't have streaming. We had no way to relive the movie after it came out. So, yeah, we wanted to read the comic book adaptation or we wanted to read the novel adaptation. The other thing that's going on is, we're in a world now where if somebody gets a hold of a script or even reviews a movie before it comes out, that can mean millions and hundreds of millions of dollars to the box office. And it's just, the odds of, somewhere, someplace along the pipeline, somebody getting a copy of this thing and posting it online, well, you just know it's going to happen. So that's why, in a sense, they have kind of reversed the order of these things so that, as I said, I read Star Wars in the comics format before I read before I saw the movie. I read the Empire Strikes Back novel before I saw the movie. By the time, and I saw the movie, almost immediately. By the time that the Return of the Jedi movie came along, they were actually starting to get really worried about spoilers. But even then, they weren't set up to deal with it. When the Return of the Jedi comic book adaptation came out, it came out in a magazine, an issue of Marvel Super Special. It came out about 3 weeks before the movie came out. And just nobody really thought about the fact that comic shops were going to get this thing 3 weeks before the newsstand would, because that's when comic shops got it. Marvel ended up getting a phone call from Mark Hamill, who loved comics and who found this thing in the comic shop, and he immediately called Lucas, who called Marvel, and Marvel actually sent out a guy who would later become a famous writer for them, Peter David, to go try to buy up all of the copies of the Super Special in New York City for fear that the news of Luke and Leia being brother and sister would get out. It was too late. It was in like the National Enquirer or Weekly World News like the next day. It was everywhere. And, you know, it impacted people's enjoyment to a degree. Nobody cared about that in the 60s about a movie. Spoiling a movie in advance. You watch the old trailers of movies, they show you the whole thing.
Yeah.
Trailers used to be a lot longer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and they would show you everything. You would know who shot the bad guy. It was all you know, sort of spoon fed out to you, because they figured, yeah, people still go anyway. Not these days. You know, these days, yeah, as soon as a novel that I write hits, and this is kind of frustrating. They're on the message boards. People will be going, "All right, go ahead. You know, give me a synopsis of the book. You know, go ahead, spoil it for me. Tell me everything." And I look at that. I really hate spoilers. And
so do I.
And the reason is not so much because you know, it's like I think it's got to be all about me, and you know, you can't talk about it. My attitude is this: what are the odds that Joe Random Person is going to tell the story better than the people who made the movie, wrote the book, did the TV show, or whatever? They're not really very good.
No, it's usually 0 to none.
Yeah, and as a writer, I'm kind of in solidarity to that. I spend a ridiculous amount of time working on the surprises in my books, working on the shocking, you know, turns of events. And we got all these people that, you know, their impulse is fast forwarding to the end. You know, my mother's in her 80s. If I put a movie on, she says, "Yeah, do the good guys win? Tell me how it ends. Tell me how it ends. Tell me how it ends." Because she just wants to be comfortable with it. It's why she probably watches Perry Mason all the time, because every episode ends the same way. But you know, for somebody who's you know, looking to have a story surprise them now and again, you know, it's not something where spoilers really help.
Well, listen. All right. So you broke it down for everybody. You told everybody about the comic books. That was your first memory of Star Wars. Now, would you say that when you first read this comic, or when you first saw the movie, was a certain frame or a certain panel in the book or a certain series of panels or a splash page, something that stuck out to you as a kid saying, "Whoa," and it just connected with you? Or just overall, after you were done reading the book and watching the movie, you said, "Okay, I'm down with this. I like this. This is my type of thing."
Well, on the comic side, it was kind of special because it was the first sort of grown-up comic book I had ever read. You know, I was reading Disney comiks and Richie Rich, that kind of thing. I was back when they had kids comics.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of stuff I was reading. So it was already something that was on a higher reading level than I was used to. And again, Roy Thomas and Howard Chaykin did such a great job with the comic that, you know, you can reread that thing again and again, and there's just a whole lot of interesting stuff in there. And of course, the comic was a big deal. It sold over 1 million copies. It was the first time a comic book had sold over 1 million copies since 1960. So I mean, it was a huge deal. But you know, as far as you know, the movie itself, I think one of the things is you got to kind of remember, and again, the people who are born after the 1970s, 80s will never know a world without Star Wars, so they will never understand what it was like to not have that kind of special effects, to not have that kind of sound design that you've got in that movie, to not have the level of costuming that they've got in there, and all the things that were in Star Wars for the very first time. They just are just not going to know. As the phrase says, you had to be there.
No,
So there was definitely a you had to be there moment. Another element to it is, do you guys watch a lot of science fiction movies from the 70s?
Yes.
If you,
Oh, I have. Yeah. I mean, I'm 43 years old, so I was born
very
in the
good.
70s.
So if you do, you probably have noticed that there's kind of this watershed moment there, which is Star Wars, which is that everything before Star Wars is depressing. It is Westworld. It is Soylent Green. It is Lucas's own movie THX 1138. It is it's a Silent Running, where there's just one forest left in the world. It is the big hit movie of 1976, the year before, was Logan's Run. Logan's Run is a pretty picture, and I love that movie for a lot of different reasons. But what is the central theme of this movie? You get to be 30 years old and then you die. You cannot. The government kills you at age 30. So, this is a very downbeat period. It is in response to the 1960s and the fact that a lot of the high hopes that the baby boomers had, kind of blew up because of the Vietnam War and everything else, and Watergate and all the stuff that's going on. So, we're used at that point to science fiction movies being dark and depressing, and they're usually telling us about a future that sucks. They're usually very foreboding, and they're not fun. And what happens is sort of the culture begins to turn, not exactly on a dime, but I actually put it a little earlier than Star Wars with another little movie called Rocky. And Rocky is almost where you see that changeover in the culture, because all the other movies, French Connection and things like that of the early 70s, were like that as well. They were network. They were all depressing. They were all downbeat. Rocky, you watch the first 90 minutes of that movie, and this guy's life is 24/7 bad. He's not a happy person. He's beating people up for the mob. He's having to train by punching meat, and we get this sort of uplifting story by the end of it. And the good guy doesn't ultimately win. Spoiler, I guess there, but it's uplifting. Well, Star Wars, the good guys get to win, and that's just about 5 months later, and that is kind of the whole thing turning. And from there on out, you have this sort of collision between the better themes or the happier themes of Star Wars, sort of everything's in black and white in Star Wars. There's no shades of gray, and you have the collision of that.
It's like made very it's very distinct, and they make sure you know who the bad guys are, who the good guys are, so forth.
It's a Western. It's a samurai movie. It's literally the good guy, Luke Skywalker, is wearing white. The bad guy, Darth Vader, is wearing black. It is as comic strip, Saturday morning cereal as you can get. It is very simple.
Well,
and
you know what, John, we have a saying in wrestling, and unfortunately, some of the new kids and some of the new generations, they don't follow it. Right?
Yeah.
It's called. I mean, you probably heard it. KISS. Keep it simple. Stupid. Less is more.
Yeah.
when you go to a wrestling match and you watch an event or you watch a bout, you know, you don't if these guys are going from 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 and they stay at 100 for the whole course of the match,
Yeah.
people can't register and digest what's going on. So,
Oh, yeah.
by design, I think I mean, you're a writer. In your books and what you have written, you can obviously see that Lucas, by design, decided to keep it so simplistic because
Yeah.
one, Star Wars is for children, and
Yeah.
two, those of us who came up loving Star Wars as a child, it was
Yeah.
easy to know the bad
Yeah.
guy
No,
and the good guy.
It was very simple.
Oh, yeah.
It was cops and robbers, and but remember, let's look at the movies that we got coming up to Star Wars. The robbers were the good guys in those movies. I mean, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Bonnie and Clyde, everything had been kind of turned on its head. It was the anti-hero, and Star Wars flips that. Now, this is the thing. It does get more nuanced because Empire Strikes Back, he starts layering on some more sophisticated thoughts. And, we realize that the Jedi are compromised in a number of ways. We realize that his father was compromised. We realize that, Obi-Wan was not telling him the absolute truth. That's the kind of thing you can do, though, after you've set it all up. And everybody knows who's who. Yep. And as your people who are watching are also growing up. I mean, Empire Strikes Back was a good movie for a kid who was 12. And it at the time, because it was a little further beyond, what we had 3 years earlier. But yeah, I mean, when I say that you kind of had to be there to kind of recognize the collision of what was going on. The other thing that was happening, there's kind of two parts to this, but the way that movies were being presented had completely changed because of Jaws, because of Steven Spielberg, and because we were beginning to move towards this model where the way that it had been is if you had a new movie, it would sort of trickle out across the country. It would be in an exclusive engagement in one theater in a town, and it would stay there. And then eventually it would start going out to what they call the second run houses, and would get it into everywhere. Well, Jaws, Spielberg didn't care. It was like, put it everywhere. Well, Star Wars wasn't quite, put it everywhere right at the beginning. But once they continued to re-release it and everything, it went everywhere. And so this is sort of the dawn of the blockbuster where, it actually is possible after a movie's been out for 2-3 weeks for more people to have seen the movie than not have seen the movie. Or at least that's what it felt like. So you have that going on. You also had this other element, which gets back to what we were talking about a while ago, Spiro, where we were talking about the other media, the other things, the other tie-ins. The whole idea of, the merchandise. There had been other TV shows, other movies that had merchandise. Planet of the Apes had a lot of old cool stuff with it. Star Trek had this and that. It had some toys, had some models. But when George Lucas, when he was making his deal with Fox and saying, all right, you can have more of the distribution rights for the picture, you can have more of the money there, but I want the merchandising rights and I want approval over all the merchandising. And they were like, yeah, who cares? Who wants that? Well, it turns out that changed everything. That changed everything. And so we end up in a world where the stuff is everywhere. You turn on the radio. There's the disco theme from Star Wars on the radio because that thing is in the top. That thing gets to number one. I had forgotten it hit number one. It's about 7 degrees of awful, but that was number one. It was just every place. It was on clothing and everything else. So it was kind of fun that the only other time where I think I relived something like that. The only time I relived anything like that would have been 1989 with Batman. because Batman was another thing where you suddenly saw it everywhere, and it was on the radio constantly, and it was on on T-shirts, posters, Taco Bell. It was every place. By that time they actually had fast food restaurants with tie-ins. We didn't have any Happy Meals back in '77, but yeah, I mean it's a sign though that the way that movies got out into the public consciousness changed, and it became a much bigger industry than it ever was. And so, it's kind of fun being in my little corner of it, doing my portion of the storytelling for whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica or anything else that I've written for. The stakes are a lot lower on what I do, but it is still part of the same franchise, still part of the same universe, and sometimes it's even canon.
That's as you know, we have a running joke on the show. Spiro's a big Knights of the Old Republic fanatic, and he loves Revan. And we always bust his chops because we say Revan isn't canon, and he says it is, and it's now become a running gag on the show for a quite amount of time. So you'll hear me throw shade at him for Revan all night long.
Well, Revan is an interesting case because, of course, I wrote the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic comic series.
Yep.
I wrote that for about 5 years. In fact, as we're recording this, yesterday was the 10th anniversary of the final issue of the first storyline coming out, which makes me feel really old.
Are you guys talking about Revan? Sorry.
Yes, we are.
I just want to let you know he's not canon. I'll be back.
Well, it depends on where you look, because where he is still canon.
I have an ally here.
Where he is still canon is in the Old Republic in the video game, because the online multiplayer game, they decided when they did all the other changeovers, and when they did my novel New Dawn, which kind of sort of restarts, or it's the official first novel in this sort of new era of storytelling. They decided that the Old Republic, which builds on the original 2 games, and also it does build on the comics that we did, because you will find all sorts of locations in the game that have names that we came up with. There's a space station called Carrick Station. That's Zane Carrick from the comic book series, who's named after my college dorm. But
wow.
But it's kind of funny to see these things are still out there. And the reason it's still out there is the game was doing well. The game, is still going. Why, it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so, and as far as canon or not or whatever, it's important to remember what they did when they did this announcement. I was writing the novel that I wrote after Kenobi was called A New Dawn. It was originally not called A New Dawn. It didn't have an official name, but it was going to be a tie-in with the Rebels TV series. And I was working with Dave Filoni and the other 2 executive producers of the series on this book, because we wanted it to be the first meeting of Kanan and Hera from the TV show. And we wanted the book to come out before, we originally wanted it to come out a little before the TV show. The TV show got delayed by a month, so I ended up coming out like 5-6 weeks before it. But the idea was that they were giving me all sorts of information about what was happening with these characters, what their secrets were, what was happening in the first season. And I was going to write the book as if I had seen all of that, as if I was writing in retrospect. And what happened is I got about 2/3 of the way through the book, and they contacted me from my publisher. They said, "We need you to go out quietly, secretly to Lucasfilm, and you're going to be part of the announcement that we did. We did it on video. It was me and it was Timothy Zahn, who they also flew out. We did a video discussing how everything starting with New Dawn was, working with what they call the Lucasfilm Story Group, which turns out to be the thing that I was working with. I didn't even know the name of it, but that everything from there on out was going to be regarded as having happened to the characters, and everything before was going to be rebranded as Legends. And that includes my Kenobi novel, which was the first novel that had the Legends banner on it when we did the reprinting of it. And the thing about Legends, and it's very simple, as Pablo Hidalgo has described it, and I think it's perfect. Legends can be real. Legends can be fantasy. Legends can be partially real. It's just like in real life. Robin Hood. What do you know about Robin Hood that's true? Well, some things about him are correct. Some things about him are not. King Arthur. Was King Arthur real? Well, some things are correct. Some things are not. Some things are myth. So what they decided to do is we're going to leave everything that's back there in the universe. It's all still there. My New Dawn novel drew upon locations that we had used before, species that we had used before, only in the novels, only in the comics. There's chemicals, there's explosives in the New Dawn novel where I use those names from things I had made up in Knights of the Old Republic in the comics. And the thing is, there's no reason to change all that stuff. The way you can kind of look at it is it's almost as if all of that stuff is like the rule book for the role-playing game, where you have the guide to the universe kind of. And here are some broad strokes. And you can include some of these elements in your game or not, depending on whether you want to. Now, with regard, for example, to Revan, there are probably, I would imagine, difficulties in saying that the whole Old Republic period, 3,956 years ago, before Star Wars, is canon, simply because that that's a long way in the past. That nails down a whole lot of stuff, a whole lot of real estate, and it makes it a little bit more difficult to tell different kinds of stories. And that's the whole purpose of this, is to make sure that the people that are making the movies for Disney and the TV shows and everything have as much room as possible to tell the best stories they can. But that doesn't mean that a character like Revan, that a character like Zane Carrick in the Knights of the Old Republic comics could not have existed during the Clone Wars or before the Clone Wars, briefly before, or 10 years before, 100 years before. There's ways to actually bring some of that stuff forward or around. Look at Thrawn. Thrawn is the case where you've got all these Thrawn novels, and they deliberately brought the character into the Rebel show and into new novels. And is the fact that that's happening does that mean that all the previous novels with Thrawn in them are now canon? No, it doesn't. However, a lot of the things we happen to know about Thrawn, which we learn in those books, is incorporated into the current guy. So it's one of those things where we can really get way you can ruin the whole recipe by by worrying too much about the ingredients after a certain point.
Basically, John, on this show we have a couple of sayings. One saying we always say is we never let the truth get in the way of a good lie or a good insult or a good joke. Yeah. So we just bust chops about the whole Revan thing. I mean, we all like him. I mean, visually he looks great, and Spiro's a big KOTOR, I guess you could say, historian. He knows more about all that stuff than both Alex and myself. But let me ask you this.
Sure.
You wrote novels before they were purchased by Disney, and you wrote a novel after they were purchased by Disney. Yeah. Would you say the process of spitting out the material and writing the novel itself in both different time periods, was it equally the same? Would you say there was more pressure with Disney because you were the first book that's in the new canon? or would you say that is just another day in the office for you?
Well, like I say, I was 2/3 of the way through the book before I learned what it was going to be.
Yeah.
That they were going to do this.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it was another day at the office till then.
Yeah.
It
But did you have
I,
to go back and do revisions?
no, well, what I did was I just went back and tweaked some things to make it feel more introductory. But I kind of do that anyway. I kind of do all of my books like, I try to do all of my books so that they kind of, as they say, every comic book is somebody's first. Every novel is somebody's first with that universe. You don't want to you don't want to dump a lot of things in there that people have never heard of. So if I did anything, it was that I went through that book and there's a lot of species, for example, that only appear in the comics and not in the movies. I didn't take those guys out, but I didn't say this is a Zeltron because if somebody's gonna go, what the hell is a Zeltron? I didn't want them to. I didn't want them to do that because they never saw that on the screen. That was a comic book character or a comic book species, and so that was something we did. We also kind of tried to weed out some of the novel, some of the words that had only appeared in the novels, like refresher for bathroom. Although that came back, just about everything we threw out came back. So these things are never permanent. But no, I mean, we were always worrying about what effect any one of our stories would have on the larger universe, or whether it would conflict. Even before Disney. Again, that Kenobi novel again. Kenobi was originally going to be a comic book. It was going to be a graphic novel. And I wrote the plot for it in 2006. So that is 7 years before the novel came out. And what happened to make me shelve it is, first of all, well, I kept rewriting the plot. It kept getting longer and longer. I realized this thing will never fit in a graphic novel. I also had the experience where my editor got moved from Star Wars to Indiana Jones, and he wanted me to do the adaptation for Indiana Jones 4, and so I ended up doing that instead. But then the other thing that was going on was in 2007, there was a rumor circulating that George Lucas wanted to do a TV show set in between Episode 3 and Episode 4, and there was going to be live action. And I looked at it and I looked at my plot and I said, I bet I can't write about what Obi-Wan Kenobi's life is like now. And so now we fast forward to 2012. We're just before the Disney buyout. Lucas has done the Clone Wars TV series. That turns out to be what he's got. There's no live action show. And when they asked me for a novel concept, I bring this one off a shelf, and they said, "Go for it. Let's write." And so, we're always keeping one eye on what the studio is doing, what their needs for the characters are, and it's not even necessarily just with the movies. You talk about Knights of the Old Republic, the games. There was a long period in there where we didn't know whether Coder 3 was going to happen. Or I'll rephrase that, where I didn't know whether Coder 3 was going to happen because I'm just some schmuck out in Wisconsin writing comic books. And so I did Revan's origin story. I did early stories with Malik in the Knights of the Old Republic comics, but I was careful never to show Revan's face, never to even use a pronoun with Revan, never to do anything that would step on if they were going to use him again in Coder 3. And as it turns out, they didn't use him in Coder 3. Drew Karpyshyn used him in a novel called Revan, and those some other subtitle with that novel that escapes me right now. But anyway, I just felt that wasn't my story to tell. My story was set 7 years before Coder, the first game, and it made sense that I had Revan in there. But basically, my character just kind of Forrest Gumps his way through Revan's story. We never actually make Revan the star. I don't establish anything that's gonna wreck anything. Well, that's a case of me in one medium keeping an eye on what people are doing in another parallel medium, and so we've always been doing that. Now with Lucasfilm and the story group, there's just sort of another sort of echelon to it, which is that they have people that are keeping their eye on things for us. They're keeping their eye on things for all the writers, and that is sort of evolving with Star Trek as well. And of course, that's who I've done most of my most recent work for. We've got people that, as I say, we have Kirsten Beyer, who created the new Picard show, or co-created the new Picard show. She helped co-create the original plot for this book, and for my new book, which is about the Emperor character, Emperor Georgiou from the Discovery show, and we also have some other people who are working with CBS and with the TV show people to try to coordinate things. And so we're it's kind of like air traffic control, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is what it is. You're keeping yourself busy. Would you say now?
Hey guys,
what would you say, Alex?
I've never heard of the Star Trek thing this guy's talking about, so you're gonna have to keep me up to speed. I've never heard of that property.
Nice.
It's a small little thing. I was born the day that the episode of Star Trek came out where they went to the planet where everybody acted like they were in the TV show The Untouchables, where everybody was in the 1930s.
Was that one called
a piece of the action? That thing was. What's that?
Was that one called a piece of the action? I'm trying.
It was a piece of the action. That's right.
Look at the knowledge that's coming through right there.
Oh yeah. But Star Wars was my first fandom. But then what happened is George Lucas does Return of the Jedi, and he just goes away. He puts Star Wars on the shelf for a while, and so that's when my Star Trek fandom really sort of blossomed. And we got the Next Generation in there, and I began to get into the movies and the other stuff. And of course, then Star Wars comes back around, and now it looks like nothing will ever end. It's just going to be movies and TV shows forever.
Not when there's tons of money to be made, and the accessibility now is so much easier than it was before. Like you said.
Stuff has come back I never thought would come back. One of the books on my shelf back there. Last year, I did a comic book series for the 40th anniversary of Battlestar Galactica, and I wrote it as if that TV series back when I was a kid never ended. I wrote it with the characters from then and everything. I had no idea back, nobody ever had an idea that would come back again on Sci-Fi Channel, and that they would do it completely differently. And now the rumor is that they're going to do it a third time. Again, it's as you say, things will just stay going indefinitely, and I just the beast must be fed, so we have to keep giving it new stories.
Very true, very very true. Quick question. Now, you write novels and you have written comic books. Which do you prefer, writing a comic series or writing a novel, or which is easier for you?
Yeah. It's kind of like choosing between beef and chicken. Some days you want one, some days you want the other. The things about comics which are cool is when it all comes together, it's beautiful. I mean, when you get an artist that is reading your mind, or better, when an artist is drawing stuff better than you could have imagined. Then you're on cloud nine. When you're having to really, fight to get things to look the way that you want them to, because it is kind of like directing a movie. Yeah. And every so often you'll have a comic book that you'll get it as the writer and you'll throw it across the room because it'll be like, oh God, that's not what I wrote. Or they totally missed the idea. but that is rare, and I never will say which book it is or whatever, because we succeed or we fail as a team. But so there's that element with comics. On the other hand, with novels, I can really get into subjects that you can't in comics. The comic books I grew up with had a little thing called the thought balloon. Was a little cloud that would be over your head saying what you were thinking of. And Spider-Man would be thinking all his way through a fight. And the comics back then took a lot longer to read because they had that there. Well, Frank Miller comes along and he kills the thought balloon with Batman. And now we do have those with their captions, and only the one character who's like the main character you ever will see, the captions for. And so you never really are able to get into what's in people's minds. And also a lot of visual stuff, or rather a lot of concepts that aren't visual, you can't really put into comics. Talking about history, talking about politics, talking about philosophy. There's a lot of stuff that you'll put into a novel that, a comic book, it would stop dead. The Kenobi thing, the reason I said that thing could not be a comic book by the time I got done with the plot, it would have been 400 pages long, because I wrote it as, one of the old, Westerns where there are long stretches where it's quiet. There are long stretches where we're on the desert and nothing's happening. There's stuff happening. It's just happening in people's minds. Or, it's because he's in this book, he's sort of the mysterious stranger who wanders into town, he's ruminating about everything that's going on in the war. And the fact that he's going to be stuck out here in this god-awful place for who knows how long. That's
John.
Yeah.
Is there any? Do you know? Is there any talk of possibly for the upcoming Kenobi series? Will they look at your book for any storyline ideas?
54 minutes. 54 minutes is what it took to get to this question. Usually these days I get that one like right away. It's one of those things where if I knew I couldn't say, and if I don't know, I shouldn't say. So I can tell you they are free. Because everything is out there in the collection of stuff that they have published. They are free to draw from any story they ever have, and they're free to do a number of things with it. And sometimes we have seen look at the Marvel movies. They'll pick stuff up, and you'll see the movie makers use things. One of the cool things that happened to me is I've had characters from my Iron Man comics that I wrote some years ago show up, both in the first two Iron Man movies and in Ant-Man and the Wasp. And for the Ant-Man and the Wasp one, I actually got to go to the premiere. And my name's in the credits in the end, and that was really cool. And it's all because this sort of sandbox has been filled over the years by all these other stories that they have to draw from. And as for that particular program, if I knew I couldn't say, and if I don't know I can't say.
He can either he pleads the fifth. We got it. No worries.
It's there's absolutely no reason for me to be part of a headline anywhere.
Well, listen, just so you know, okay, we have a saying on this show. All right, a lot of podcasts, a lot of YouTube channels, a lot of these people on the internet, they like to throw things in headlines just to get clicks, clickbaits. We don't do that. We have a saying here on the NFL, which is we, the new Force Order, we do not try to get ourselves over on Star Wars. We continue to get Star Wars more over with the fans. And what over means, I don't know if you're privy to the term, it's wrestling terminology, which means popular. Okay, when a good guy, wrestler, babyface is over with the fans, people will pay an exuberant amount of money to come see them beat up the bad guy. and when the bad guy is over as a heel or as a heavy, with the fans, people will pay numerous amount of dollars to come see him get his butt kicked. So you don't have to worry. We're not trying to bait you into getting any.
No, what I always have said is more Obi-Wan Kenobi is always good.
Oh, absolutely. He's one of the greatest characters.
What I've also always said is always in motion is the future, or however Yoda puts it. And so, I was involved with a novel, or actually a collection of stories that tied in with Canto Bight tied in with episode 8. It was called Canto Bight. That was a couple of years ago. That was a blast, because that was something where I got to write a novella about one night in the casino, and I got to write about a card player and basically make all of my time that all the time and money that I've wasted in casinos is now tax deductible. So,
nice. It's a research project.
That's awesome.
Well, actually, I don't think I can get away with that, but yeah, but that is one of the cool things though about Star Wars and also Star Trek and these other franchises is there's room to tell different kinds of stories. This is a Las Vegas story that I did in Canto Bight. Kenobi is a Western. To a degree, A New Dawn is a spy novel. My new Star Trek novel, Die Standing, is absolutely a spy novel, right down to it having sort of a James Bond sounding name. So there's all sorts of ways, all sorts of room in these franchises to tell different kinds of stories. The Lost Tribe of the Sith book that I did, that's a sword and sorcery book, because that's on a planet with no technology. It's really lightsaber and Sith sorcery, if you want to call it that. So yeah, there's a room in these universes, in these sandboxes, to go a lot of different directions. And I think what we're seeing now is with the advent of streaming, it has become possible to explore several of those directions at the same time. Whereas, in the past, it was like, you either have a TV show or you don't. You rarely would have two shows on concurrently. I mean, I think Trek had, I think Voyager and Deep Space Nine on concurrently for a brief time, but that's rare. I mean, in the older days, you would not see anything like multiple things going on at the same time. Although I guess now we've got it with CSI and Law and Order and with all those other things.
Oh, geez.
But streaming makes that a lot easier to be able to go in a lot of directions at once, and to pursue a lot of different things. And then having the novels and the comics, that those are other directions or other avenues where you can take stories in other directions.
Well, let me ask you a two-part question here. If they decide to cherry pick anything out of your novel and throw it into the Kenobi series or movie, depending on what is going to happen, do you end up getting a kickback because it initially came from your book? That's the first question. The second question, because
I'll defer on the first question. What's the second one?
The second question is,
I guess the answer is no.
I guess so. The second question is, if it was up to you, would you rather see Kenobi as a, let's say, 6-episode, 10-episode series, or would you rather see it as a film in the theater?
As I said, anything is more Kenobi is good, and there's lots of ways to be able to do it. As I said, I started my concept as a comic book, as a graphic novel, and it went to a novel. What I have kind of come down on with the novel itself, and I discussed this on Twitter about a week ago, it's basically that anybody who writes Obi-Wan Kenobi has a number of choices to make, and one is does he ever leave the planet or not? And I made my choice with my book. That doesn't mean that other people can't come up with different ways with their books. I can tell you that the way I saw the character when I'm writing the book was that he's in jail. He cannot leave. The way I approached it, and kind of the way I look at it is, he's got one job. It's this kid. The kid is the new hope. His job is to get this kid grown up, and what happens after that is what happens after that. And basically, there are other people out there to do the other things that the rebels are doing. It's why the rebellion exists, is to buy time, is to buy time for the heroes to come back. And so that's kind of how I approach it. I mean, I look at it as also, it's probably, if you think about the movie The Shawshank Redemption, that Andy Dufresne is in jail for about the same amount of time that Obi-Wan is stuck on Tatooine. It's 19 years. And that movie might play differently if Andy was going off on furlough every weekend to Boston to have fun. You would or sneaking out all the time. I think it plays kind of better if it's in isolation for that period. But again, that's my approach to the one book. And there's 55 different versions of Batman right now. And every one of them is valid.
Yeah. I get your point. Where, I mean, the only reason why I was asking, I was asking only because I'm not privy to how your industry works. So it was just a fundamental.
As I joke about this, I live at the end of a dead end road in northern Wisconsin. I am pretty far from the water cooler out in Hollywood.
No, but I was curious.
I may not be the best person to ask on a lot of stuff.
Well, no, what I'm saying, for you brought up Timothy Zahn before, right? Timothy Zahn wrote the novels prior to the acquisition about Thrawn. He wrote the new novels about Thrawn. So when they bring Thrawn on to Rebels and they start incorporating some of his fundamental characteristics that may have been from his novels in the past, so the fans from the past who love the books may connect with them now. I just figured, does that equate to a check because the guy originally came up with the idea? I mean, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
I think that would be contractually whatever is between the people. I don't know.
Okay, I just thought it might have been an industry standard. I have no idea.
There are no industry standards on that kind of thing.
Okay,
cool. It was in the 1970s. They had to have a letter writing campaign to get the guys who created Superman a credit in the movie.
I know, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the sort of thing that's evolved over time. And as I noted, if you go to a Marvel movie now, you got the names right there. I mean, you get Stan Lee's name, you get Jack Kirby's name, you get all the names at the end. If you saw the Crisis on Infinite Earths episodes of the DC TV series, you got Marv Wolfman who wrote Crisis going up at the end. I mean, that's awesome. It's a different world, and every answer is going to be different from everybody on every franchise. And in this case, I don't know what to tell you.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We have a segment on this show that's called "Who's More Over." We want you to partake in the segment, if you will. What we do is I just explained before what over meant, and if you fans out there, all three of you guys weren't listening, then too bad. But what we do is we compare two aspects from Star Wars lore, whether it's a person, place, or a thing, and we try to see who's more over, not only with the fans, but most importantly with us. So this week, usually Doc does the intro, but Doc obviously is missing, so I'll throw it to Spiro. Spiro, who are our contestants?
All right. This week's segment of Who is Moreover. we're gonna be seeing double here. Okay, we got the battle of the Yodas. On one corner, we have the puppet Yoda. Okay, uh, practical special effects Yoda, if you will. And then the other corner, we have CGI Yoda.
Okay. So let's throw it to our guest first. So, John, who is more over with you? Is it CGI Yoda or is it practical effects Yoda? I already know the answers to this.
Now, define over again, because I'm an old guy.
Over means more popular. So
more
when
popular.
So if you go to a wrestling
okay.
event,
Okay, I got you. Because when I was a kid, over meant that is so over. We're just done with it.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah. No, so I would have gone a different direction. No, I mean, I love what I grew up with, which is what most people are going to answer. They said the golden age is 12, and I was 12 when Empire Strikes Back came out, and so that's got to be your puppet Yoda. So there you go.
All right. What about you, Spiro?
Well, you know what? It seems like it always goes back to nostalgia, and like most people would say, you can never beat a classic, you can never beat the original. As a filmmaker myself, I can see why somebody would prefer a practical effects, a puppet. It makes it easier too for the actor working with that, to like have something there to do his job with. But on the other hand, I also understand why most people would go with the puppet, because for all the great special effects, there's some really shitty ones, like some really bad CGI out there that makes you wonder if some kid in the first grade made it. So personally, I think that if you can combine both practical effects with some CGI magic, awesome. But when the one thing that influenced my decision is seeing Mark Hamill coming in contact after so many years with the puppet of Yoda and seeing him tear, man, it's like they say, that got me in the feels. So I'm gonna go with puppet Yoda.
Well, it looks like it's a clean sweep, unless Doc decides to do a run in late and vote against us. But I'm gonna go with puppet Yoda as well. The only cool thing as far as CGI Yoda was his fight with Count Dooku. Obviously, they couldn't do it with a puppet. That would be a little bit too difficult to get a nice, clean shot, hard cam type of fight feel. A hard camera shot where he's flipping and doing all the same thing, and Dooku's in the same frame. So, I mean, you got your pros and your cons, but at the same time, like you said, the puppet itself makes it easier for the actor, and we all know that Mark Hamill did a fantastic job acting, not only in 8, but also in episode 6 as well. I'm sorry, episode 5 as well with Yoda. Even in 6, when the scene when he fades away into the Force. But yeah, definitely, totally for me, it's going to be the puppet 10 out of 10 times. What do we have on the Facebook polls? Any comments? I'll read the emails from our fans.
Okay.
We have one email regarding this that I'm going to read. It's from our consistent emailer, which I totally love, Tim Gilby. He goes,
the man.
Hey, NFO guy. Although I really do love the puppet Yoda, I am putting over the CGI Yoda this week. The Yoda versus Palpatine fight is one of my favorite Star Wars moments. Very true. I don't think it could have been pulled off, or we could pull off a scene like that with a puppet. Yalla and NFO for life.
For life.
Nice. He has a valid point there. He has a valid point. The only thing that I'm going to interject with, and John, if you have 2 cents you want to throw in on this, go ahead. If we look at the prequels now compared to the CGI and the advances in technology we have today, unless they start remastering everything from the prequels, and hopefully they will, they kind of look a little, not hokey, but a little flat, a little unrealistic, in my opinion. The texture isn't as dense. It looks like maybe because we know how the sausage is made, it looks like a CGI character as opposed to looking lifelike, like I've seen in recent films with CGI. But the puppet, I can watch Empire Strikes Back till I'm 170 years old, and it will still look real every single time. So
It's because it is real. So
yeah,
that
it is real.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
well,
Exactly.
real. Well, at least it's. I mean, it should. It's going to be lit right. That's
yeah,
the whole
That is the
ball
key.
game.
Yeah.
It's going to be lit right because it's a 3D thing existing in the room that they were filming in. So, yeah, I mean, well, look, it's with each of the trilogies, they're always going to be, locked in time in where they came from, the 70s slash 80s, 90s slash aughts, and then whatever the heck we called this last decade. You're always going to be able to look at them and not just what they look like visually, but also thematically and how they're approached. There's a different sensibility between each of the trilogies. It's all still Star Wars, but each one is coming in a different direction.
No, we have a saying on the show. We say there's only one thing better than Star Wars, and that's more effing Star Wars. So
Hey, you want the numbers?
yeah, let's see what the people online had to say on social media.
I was actually expecting a wider margin, but Puppy Yoda wins 65% to 35. We got a few comments
Wow.
here. Yeah, I know. We got shout out to Chuchi over here. Yoda versus Yoda. Should have had Dark Side Yoda from Rebels. Maybe one day, maybe. John Enright can't beat a classic. Puppy Yoda felt so real to me, and then he has that gif of that guy. It's still real to me.
Oh, the wrestler.
Remember him?
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, the producer, none other than Raymond Big Ray Hernandez. CGI Yoda sucks. That nasty blue milk. And that's that, man.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we say this every week. You guys want to partake in any of our segments? You guys want to send us an email? All you have to do is send us an email, newforceorder@yahoo.com. Let us know if you have any ideas of who's more over. We have taken ideas from the fans in the past, and we have incorporated it into the show. We want to be more interactive with everybody and have a grander discussion and a grander, time talking about a galaxy far, far away, because that's why we do this. We're not doing it for the money because we're not getting paid, and we're not doing it because, we want to try to get clicks and spew hate just for the sake of spewing hate. That's not us. That's the other podcast. We're just doing it because we love Star Wars and we want to share our love with you out there in the internet world, or whatever you want to call it. I'm an old fogey, so deal with it. But anyhow, moving forward, John, you said you have a new book coming out for Star Trek. When's that dropping?
That comes out on July 14th, and that is from Gallery Books. It is, as I say, it's called Star Trek Discovery Die Standing, and this features a character that we meet in the first season of Discovery, the Emperor from the Mirror Universe, who gets loose in our universe, and hilarity ensues. The story goes from there, and that's the character that Michelle Yeoh plays. Yeoh plays in the TV series, and that is kind of the follow-up to the novel that I did last summer, which again is Enterprise War, and that also is tying in with a Discovery event. It is where Captain Pike and Spock and the Enterprise were during the entire first season. They missed the Klingon War because they were in the middle of a war of their own. And so that book is out now. in ebook, paperback, and also audiobook. All of the audiobooks are great. They just do a wonderful job with these things. And then Star Wars. My most recent thing for Star Wars is in reprint form. Last year they put out the third volume of my Knights of the Old Republic comics. There's 3 volumes, 3 giant Legends epic collections. You get all 3. You have the entire 1,000 some odd page story. So that is out. Also, IDW has put out a collected edition that has the annual that I did the previous year for Star Wars Adventures. That's the kids comic that they've got out there. That has the first story that I've ever written with Luke and Leia and the droids. And so that was a lot of fun because I've written about all these other different parts of the Star Wars timeline. But that was the first time I actually got to write those characters. So that was a lot of fun. And as far as the future, it is, as I said, the future is always in motion. People can find my stuff on my website, farawaypress.com. I've got a behind-the-scenes page on all of the stories that I've written, Star Wars and otherwise. And then my Twitter is JJMFaraway.
Well, very good. Listen, John, thank you for coming on to the show. I just wanted to ask you real quick before you go off. Before you even did your plugs, I was hoping to ask you 2 things. One would be, out of all the characters that you've written for, both Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel, whatever, who's your favorite that you have written for? It might be a hard question to ask. It's like trying to ask a parent who's your favorite kid. So, if you can't answer it, I understand.
There's a lot of different ones, but there was a character, the sidekick in my Knights of the Old Republic comics was a little guy named Griff, and he was a grifter, but he's pure greed. He's absolutely unabashed capitalist. Never ever wants to get into a fight. Never wants to get into a firefight. Always is looking at the merchandise and making sure that I loved writing his dialogue. He was just so much fun.
Very cool. Very cool. The second question I wanted to ask you is, obviously me not being a writer by any stretch of the imagination, what is the process like for you to go down this pathway of writing books for Star Wars and Star Trek and things of that nature? What's the actual physical step-by-step process?
Well, tie-in novels are different from other kinds of novels in that you don't own the characters. So they have to approach you and say they want you to pitch for their universe, or they want you to propose a story, or sometimes they bring the story to you. They say, we want you to write a story about what happened to, in the case of Enterprise War, what happened to the Enterprise during this 1 year where it's missing. Then I'll write the story. And usually even then, 98% of the ideas will be mine. But there's that input. And then what happens is we go through a couple of rounds of, on the outline, on the plot. It has to be approved not just by the editors I'm working with, the publishers I'm working with, but also whoever owns the characters, the studio. And then it goes to the manuscript in the case of a novel, or the script in the case of a comic book. And once again, that goes through proofreading, stages as well, and approvals. For example, right now, literally tonight, I'm in the middle of doing the proofreading on that Star Trek novel, Die Standing, which comes out in July. And it is probably the second of about 5 times I'm going to have this book back on my desk, because we go through multiple rounds of proofreading and catches and proofreading to try to get everything right. And you will not believe how a single error can sneak past you all those times. and still get into print with 5 people looking at it. But that's why we do it. That's why we spend so much time, because when a book has got 104,000 words in it, that's a lot to get right.
Oh, absolutely.
You need to have one of those droids, man.
If I could find one, I would hire it. That would be right away. All right. Well, this has been great, guys. I appreciate coming on your show.
Listen, thanks for coming on, John. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you giving us a minute and talking about Star Wars and everything else that you do. We obviously appreciate what you do, being fans of the lore, and obviously you're doing great work, because I'm a fan of your novel New Day. I'm sorry, New Dawn. New Day is a wrestling team. Sorry about that.
That is not a mistake I would have made.
No, but real quick, do your plugs one more time.
Okay, yeah, that's
the fancy
farawaypress.com. That's got the behind the scenes notes on everything. My Twitter is JJM Faraway. John Jackson Miller on Facebook. And I also run a website on the side, which we didn't get into because that would take a lot longer. I run a website called Comicron, which is it's sort of like the Billboard magazine of comic books. It's the world's largest public database of comic book sales figures.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I've been doing that for a living for like 25 years. Back before it was a website. I was running a magazine for the comics retailers, and called Comics Retailer, and so I just decided I was going to keep that going after I retired from the magazine company to write. So I still do these things, and so one reason I'm able to wallow in the history of all of this is yesterday, for example, I posted the sales figures from January, so I was able to talk about what's coming out now. But I also was able to go back and talk about things historically, like, for example, Wonder Woman was #1 in the comics industry for the very first time. Well, I figured out it was #1 for the very first time, and that turned out to be something I could talk about, which is fun. And then I got to talk about other comics that had female leads that were #1 and what the first one was, and all of that. And it's one of those things where it allows me to stay into comics even if I'm not necessarily writing as many as I want to be, or would like to be able to have time to write. It allows me to keep into that business, and also it allows me to approach comics as a hobby to a degree, and go back and reread old comic books and find stuff out about them. So that's comicron.com. That also has its own Twitter, Comicron, COMICHRON, and also its own Facebook page.
Very cool. Listen, the open invitation to come back on the show is given to you right now. Not only talk about Star Wars or any books that you're dropping, I would love to have you come back, even though it's a Star Wars podcast. It's our podcast, so we get to do whatever we want. I want to talk more about this Comicron and all this comic book stuff. Like I said, I'm a big comic book guy. I got 14 long boxes.
This would not be the first podcast that I've dragged away from Star Wars for a week.
Listen, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. I have 14 long boxes over there. I've been drawing comics all my life. Before I got into pro wrestling, I wanted to draw from Marvel and DC, but that's a story for another time, like Maz Kanata says. And
I got 14 long boxes in the room.
Nice, nice, very nice.
No, it's not nice. I can never move. I've got too many.
I hear you. Trust me, my wife gives me grief about it.
Yeah,
Trust
man.
me.
My wife hates my guts, man. I'm telling you, man. I got a friend of mine that's always bringing me crates and boxes of either figures or comics, and I'm telling you, she's about to like kick me out of the house. And it's not nice, man. I'm telling you.
I won't tell you how many I've got. I'll just say I've got a second building for them.
Nice.
That's awesome, man.
Brother. That's awesome, man.
It means I can never leave.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys.
All right, man. How you have yourself a good night, and thank you for coming on. We'll have you on again anytime.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, take care. Good night. Ladies and gentlemen, Spiro had to step away. Quick moment, take care of some unfinished Sith business because Sith happens, aka he has to go take a dump. But whatever, let him go poop in public. I mean, in private. And as he's squeezing out those logs of hate, uh, we'll enlighten the fans. So it's that time, folks. Every week we get enlightened by the one and only toy collector in the galaxy far, far away. He has a 10th degree black belt in Kung Fu grip. My friend, your friend Doc, will let all you people know what time is this, because I know it's time for
TaTOYine.
TaTOYine. TaTOYine. TaTOYine.
I had to put my deep voice on.
Spiro's taking a poop.
For the homie that's not here. All right, so first things first, I got to turn on my phone so we can record this for the fucking website. All right. Anyway.
Well, yeah, we do have a website, folks. It's called www.newforceorder.com, where you can get all our shows back, our historic catalog of knowledge and wisdom and dick and fart jokes.
For the most part.
Yes. And we have our merchandise. The NFO catalog is deep, so deep that she will buy two of them, if you will. But anyway, Doc, let's continue.
So this week's TaTOYine, we got two things. One is kind of not a toy, but it's pretty cool, and I bought it anyway. So
it's Jesus Christ.
No, we did that last week. 2 weeks ago. I guess it's kind of similar. Company out there that I follow on Instagram, Left Coast Graphics. They do a lot of really cool designs for some old school vintage stuff. They do posters, they do some patches, and they do pins. So I picked up a pin that they had designed and developed and printed that I thought was pretty neat. It's one of the first of the Mandalorian merchandise that's not officially Disney, that's not officially Lucasfilm, and it's basically a pin on a like old school Star Wars back card, like this old school Star Wars cards of the Mandalorian in like 3 3/4 form from the vintage toy line. It's got nothing on the back, but the pins are kind of all the rage now. A lot of companies are putting out pins, a lot of other podcasts and websites, and some designers.
Real quick, Doc.
Yeah.
Put a pin in it.
I'm putting a pin in it. Yes. Yeah, I see what you did there.
What does that say on top of the card?
It says enamel pins. Not Star Wars. Enamel pins.
Gotcha.
It says vintage collector by Left Coast Graphics, and it's basically our buddy the Mandalorian in his initial first 15 minutes of episode 1 armor. So it's all got that exactly. It's all got that gimmicked up, raggedy look to it. He actually has a second one, which is the all chrome one, which is the Beskar version. But I went with the more colorful version. And a lot of places are kind of like doing pins now to do promotions.
What does that run you?
This was like $12.99 or something like that. I don't know.
You still got it? What's the website? Give him a cheap plug.
Left Coast Graphics. That's the Instagram handle. He has a TeePublic store that he does a bunch of t-shirts. A lot of the shirts that I wear, like the FX7 shirt and the 21B shirt, and some of my vintage action figure shirts are done by him. He actually has a lot of good stuff. Decent pricing on the website as well, like $13 for the sale for a shirt plus shipping and tax. Sends from Canada, so it takes a little bit extra, but well worth the wait. And he's a good dude in general. So Left Coast Graphics, you give him a follow. And that was the pin. He has other pins available as well. He actually has some patches too as well. I picked up some of these a while ago. One of these was in the package. He has a white version of the Wampa and a black version of the Wampa. So I think I'm gonna embroider these onto one of my fleeces.
Why would they be a black Wampa?
There was some like one at like Legends or something like that they were some
gotcha.
It's not canon, so it doesn't matter. We could rub that in.
Like Revan.
We could rub that in because he's not here. So, anyway, what else I got for TaTOYine this week is
I can picture him. I can picture him right now on the boat.
Revan is canon, guys.
Come on, guys.
Squeeze. Plop. It's the worst when someone logs off from steps away. It's great. Anyway, so a little Sith action here. So from the Star Wars Black Series, this is the exclusive Black Series action figures, the First Order box set. And this is only available at Galaxy's Edge, or probably the other Disney store that they have next to the in Hollywood Studios in Orlando.
So you're telling me if I walk down into Brooklyn, down in hold on, don't shake your head. No, I didn't even say
I'm gonna keep shaking it.
Sunset Park. I walk into the bodega. I walk past the cat that's sleeping on the bread. I grab a Four Loko. I won't see one of those things in the bodega.
You will not see one of these in the bodega. No bodega is going to have these right now. Not
Gotcha.
Target, not Toys R Us, RIP, not Walmart, not GameStop, not nothing. So this is one of the 3 exclusives they have at Galaxy's Edge.
You buy all 3?
I have 2 of the 3. Someone picked up one for me, thanks to one of my coworkers, Jane, who picked one up for me. Last 2 months ago, she picked up the Rey, Chewbacca, and Hondo set from what's his name? Hondo
Naka?
Yes,
Hondo
that guy.
Naka?
Yep.
They have a Black Series Hondo and Naka?
They do, but it's only available in that box set that they sell at Galaxy's Edge. So she picked that one up for me. I had the Rey ready. I had the Chewbacca, whatever. It's fine. But I needed the Hondo, so the only way to get him is in the box set. With this box set, again, only available at Galaxy's Edge, you get 3 figures. Unfortunately, one of them is one we've had a zillion times already, and that's going to be our buddy Supreme Leader Kylo Ren.
Best guy in the trilogy.
Exactly, I agree. Next to him is the Mouse Droid, which I think is also a new release too. I don't think we got the Mouse Droid in the past before. I'm trying to think if we have. Maybe, I could be mistaken. But then abutting our friend Kylo Ren is the 2 exclusive figures in this set. One is Commander Pyre, which...
He's from...
Good.
I was going to say he's from Star Wars Resistance.
Yes, he is from Resistance. You are correct. They basically just took a stormtrooper and painted him gold and put a pauldron on him, which is fine. I'll appreciate a new release. And the other one is the Mountain Trooper, which has a similar look to a different trooper that was released previously in the past before. I'm going to bring it nice and close over there. You can take a look.
Back it up a little, too much of a shine.
That's what she said. It's all I'm about is the shine.
There we go, perfect. I'm all about that heat, kid. The money's in the heat and in the cell.
So there you go, 3-pack exclusive to Galaxy's Edge. Now the problem is getting these back intact. I keep all my Black Series in their box, so you have to pack this around the dirty underwear and the dirty T-shirts, the dirty pants to make sure that exactly it gets home in decent condition.
What does that run you?
And hope TSA doesn't fucking demolish it on the way home. So this cost a grand total of $69.99 plus tax.
$70.
Yeah, I mean each Black
Series
is a lot of scuttle. Each Black Series is about $20 a piece, so it's approximately what you're going to pay. Usually, when they box them up, though, you pay less than if you do individuals. But Disney doesn't care; they will decide to rape you for whatever you're worth, as Disney normally does. So, it's like on the inside it says, after the fall of the Galactic Empire, former Imperial officers, nobles, and technologists plotted a return to power, building fleets and armies in secret. This movement became the First Order, led by Supreme Leader Snoke and commanded by Kylo Ren. So this is probably I think this has been around for at least 2 or 3 years. So at the time that The Last Jedi was released.
Spiro's favorite movie.
Exactly. Does not have a number on the side because, again, it's one of the exclusives. It doesn't have a number. The other one that's in the 3 exclusive set is C-3PO, R2-D2, BB-8, and...
Dio?
Nope. The droid that is the one that is in the Star Tours. I can't remember his name right now. But he's kind of like, he's got his flat bottom, he's got a funny head, Johnny 5, whatever the fuck his name is. He's the exclusive one to that set. I left it. I'm sure that'll be there when I get back, or I'll pick it up at some point. I mean, if you really want them, eBay usually selling them for at least $100, if not more.
The art in the front's really nice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's got that kind of black and white look to it. This is a lot of the art of the Black Series that they have on the front of the packages. Everybody has their own little bio on the back. Mountain Trooper. Like all First Order Stormtroopers, specialized units of Batu Mountain Troopers are trained from birth, growing up with unit designations instead of names and fed steady diet of First Order propaganda to ensure absolute loyalty. Kylo Ren, the son of Han Solo and Leia Organa, Ben Solo was seduced by the dark side of the Force and renamed himself Kylo Ren, becoming the First Order's champion and Supreme Leader Snoke's student. The MSE droid, aka the Mouse droid, performs simple tasks aboard starships and in military and corporate facilities. They beep to themselves as they perform small repairs, deliver messages, and guide visitors, occasionally exploding into panic squeals when confused or frightened. Commander Pyre, a fearsome First Order Stormtrooper officer, Commander Pyre stands out from the legions of identically equipped soldiers with his black and gold armor. So this is probably the better of the three sets. Oddly enough, you could only find it in the exclusive First Order shop that was in Galaxy's Edge, which was kind of annoying. Since the droid one was in the Build the Droid facility, this one was in the First Order shop. And the other one, actually, I didn't see it, so it was probably one of the shops that I either didn't go into or just blew by and missed it. The one with Honda.
By.
Exactly. A good friend of mine from high school. So I got two of the three. The third one, I'm sure at some point we'll be heading home. But that's TaTOYine this week, boys. Or boy.
Where do you get your wonderful toys, Doc? I can't fathom where you're gonna put that, because let me ask you, do you I mean, we see the cases on your over your left shoulder and the loose on over the right. Do you showcase any of your Black Series in the boxes next to each other?
So
or they're all still packed till you get more room?
So they're all packed till I get more room in my storage area that I have. I have some Black Series stuff. I bought some duplicates of a few things. I got the Snoke Throne Room box set from GameStop? That was one of those.
You got to show me that one, another TaTOYine.
Yep. And then I have a bunch of Praetorian guards surrounding him, and I have Kylo and Rey, like their backs are facing the case, so they're like facing the Praetorian guards.
So you made a scene out of it.
Yeah, I got a little diorama from it, like the my favorite scene in The Last Jedi. So, and then I've got some Emperor's
Spiro's favorite movie.
Spiro's favorite movie.
The Pooper.
The Pooper. The Sith Pooper.
Henceforth, you shall be known as Darth Pooper.
The Sith Pooper. And I got a Vader in there, and I got some other random stormtroopers and some Emperor's Royal Guards, and the bounty hunters. So I have a few of them that are open and displayed.
Well, I'm gonna piggyback on you. We're gonna do an exclusive because missing out because he's pinching one out. I got some toys too. Ooh. First things first, got this from eBay. My boy JC, Buddy Christ.
Nice.
For
James
$15.
Bob.
Yo, I saw the movie last week. Phenomenal.
Good.
Reboot. Phenomenal.
I gotta check it out.
Then I picked up these things for $10 each. I got Chewbacca, Stars of the Galaxy Adventures.
Yep.
And then I ordered this one from eBay, and this one I like a lot. I don't even know if I'm gonna open it, but it's Luke in the Return of the Jedi, and this thing looks better in person than it did in the picture.
Yep.
So I want to get the Han and maybe just open them up and leave them in the showcase, but I don't know yet. So for now, they're gonna just sit there until I ponder and pontificate on what I want to do.
The Luke I actually haven't seen, so that one's actually pretty cool. It's pretty new.
You know what? I was hoping they would come out with like a Bespin Luke. You know what I mean? Because I don't see a lot of them. I either see the X-wing Luke or the Jedi Luke.
Or the Farm Boy Luke. The Farm Boy Luke is popular.
It's popular, but that's like rare. You know what I mean? Because that was novice Luke Skywalker. You want the, hey, I blew up the Death Star. I'm a grizzled vet Luke Skywalker. And then you want the, I'm a Jedi, like my father before me Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker. So,
yeah.
Anyhow, it is what it is. You know what I did watch this week? What was cool on Disney Plus? The documentary. It's probably from the '90s because they show all footage from like the late '90s or early 2000s. I forgot what it was called. I think Rise of a Dream or something like that about making episodes 1 through 6 and George Lucas. It was really cool, man. It was really cool on Disney Plus. If you got time to kill, check it out.
I will check it out. Love me a good documentary. I watched the Stephen King documentary on the plane ride home from Arizona. It was pretty awesome. Anyway, segueing into documentaries, I think it's time this week for a little Star Wars Kama Sutra. Wee wee! And before I came upstairs, I told my wife, I said, do me a favor, baby. Pick a number between 1 and 100, not 69, because I know that's your favorite. And she gave me number 50.
50.
So we're going to go to number 50. Dead smack in the middle of the book.
Is that because she liked 50 Cent?
That's right. She did not invest in vitamin water, though, but drinks a lot of it. Anyway, so, this is a good one. Is
that what she calls you? Vitamin water?
Yeah, exactly.
Take 2 of these and call me in the morning because I'm the doc.
Take 2 inches of this and call me in the morning. So this one's called the back to tank, which I think is very appropriate because it's a very medical thing, aka 2 in the tank and 1 in the stank. And it stars, as you probably could guess, Luke Skywalker, and an odd choice, Aayla Secura, the Twi'lek Jedi, Aayla Secura. So here we have Luke with Aayla in front of her in the back to tank. And Luke is floating because this is the figure of Luke in the whole. They actually released a whole back to tank, which is awesome. It's one of my favorite pieces from the modern collection, and it's got Luke kind of suspended in the swing, like his little sex swing that he had in the back to tank when he was kind of floating, and his hair is all like getting whisked by the water, and he's got the mask on his face, and he's wearing his diaper. And in front of him, he has his arms draped over Aayla Secura, and apparently, as the description says, he's got 2 in the tank and 1 in the stank. So,
can't see it.
There you go. It's a little bit better there. Nice. Our boy SN Herder never seems to disappoint. I'm just trying to get the lighting. Is that better?
Somewhat. Folks, if you guys can't see it on YouTube, when you guys subscribe and like our page at New Force Order, go to the website. Just go check it out, www.newforceorder.com. You get a better view.
Do it!
Or go onto our social media links where we post everything, like official New Force Order on Facebook, New Force Order on Instagram, and at NFL Podcast on Twitter.
Do it! Sorry, I'm doing my consistent.
Yeah, I really want, what's his name, to put it in every time we plug something.
Yeah, we'll see. But that's the Star Wars Kama Sutra for this week. Has not let us down yet.
No, not at all. Hey, do you think it's possible we can try to find some contact information for SN Herder and get him on here?
Oh, that would be very interesting. I will do some digging about that. Man, I can't imagine this guy is so easy to find.
Makes sense.
Oh, interestingly enough, I didn't realize this. He actually has a couple of looks like haikus in the back of the Star Wars Kama Sutra.
Wait, haku?
Not Mang or Haku from the Faces of Fear. Respect to one of the greatest to lace him up. That guy's no joke.
Oh, you ain't kidding.
I shook his hand one time. I was like, are you holding a steak? Insanity. Here's a good one. Leia's dejected for what once was erected. So sad, Han shot first. I think we're doing some haikus in the back of his bed.
Oh, that's awesome. We could do like a little beatnik, Star Wars beatnik hour.
We have to have like a little intro to it.
Yeah.
All right, that's enough. I'll work on that one. Yeah, listen, I'll try to track him down. It may not be easy, but we got to, because I think this is self-published. Yeah, that's gonna be fun. All right, well, I'll figure it out.
Well, if anyone could do it, Doc.
It's me all along.
All right, there, Vince. Take it easy. It was me, Austin.
My favorite.
Anyhow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's Kama Sutra, there's TaTOYine, and hopefully Spiro will get off the porcelain potty and join us real soon. Doc, I know you got to run out and take care of your things. So, it is what it is. And thank you for smartening us up. Let them know where you can find you.
You can find me at Dr. DESTROYO on the gram of Insta. Alex Arroyo on Facebook, and Alex Arroyo MD on Twitter.
Now, before you jump off, Doc, what's better than Star Wars?
Oh, let's see. More fucking Star Wars.
And just to put the cherry on top of the sundae, what's not canon?
That would be Revan. Not now and not ever.
Boom. Well, ladies and gentlemen, another splendid guest joining the New Force Order podcast, having a good time talking shop about galaxy far, far away. Unfortunately, Doc wasn't able to partake in the discussion. He's too busy taking a poop somewhere in the hospital. Or maybe he's saving a life or two, doing God's work. Who knows? But again, we're not going to let the truth get in the way of a good story. So he's taking a poop somewhere, clogging the toilet on the 13th floor in the hospital. So that's
I think he's actually trying to reattach Luke's hand.
Probably either that or he's going somewhere looking for the Wampa arm so he can bring it home and put it onto his figure.
Nice.
But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another fantastic episode of the New Force Order. Hold on. I'm not signing off light. But all I was going to say was that even though Doc's not here, maybe we'll CGI his Force Ghost in or something. We'll figure something out. But at the end of the day, we thank you, the fans, for giving us your ears and your time and hanging with us week after week. You could find us all over social media. We'll do the plugs in a second. But first and foremost, I want you guys to support our guest, John Jackson Miller, on his plugs that he stated. Go check out his books, A New Dawn, Kenobi, all the Star Trek books, even though it's Star Trek. It's okay. And continue to show support for good people and for good podcasts. And continue showing your love for something that you're passionate about, whether it's Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, DC, whatever. It doesn't matter. Butterflies, for all I care. It's your prerogative. Doesn't matter. But anyhow, Spiro, let them know where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram, Spiro_A, as well as Darth_Spirit on Twitter, Handsome Reaper. On Facebook, as some of you might know, I am the founder and owner of Handsome Reaper Productions. I am here to announce that I will be reviving that brand. The champ here and myself have had many talks in the past for a couple of projects that we have in the pipeline. So if you want to go on Facebook, look up Handsome Reaper Productions, like the page, follow. Also on YouTube, Handsome Reaper TV. I might be taking part in a new show called Rational Rage. I've mentioned that in the past. And that's about it, man. You know, I'm trying to stay busy, focused, motivated, and highly dedicated.
That is tremendous. And you know I'll be there right next to you for the ride. We're going to be taking over the world, Greek style, only no Greeks can do, because we invented this world and we're gonna take it to the next level, baby. Woo!
Oh yeah.
Well, you can find Doc at the ER in the bathroom, taking a poop, playing with his toys. You can find me at Greek Papadon on Twitter. Oh, look who does the running!
The hot
Are we
tag.
done? Am I doing the 11:05 Nitro save?
No, we'll see you next week, folks. Hit him with your plugs, dude.
All right. By the way, Empire Strikes Back Puppet Yoda over all day long, over everything. I don't care.
All right, cool.
Yes,
It was
sir.
unanimous.
Find me at Dr. DR_Destroyo, on Instagram, Facebook, Alex Arroyo, Twitter, Alex Arroyo MD.
All right, you can find me at Greek Papadon on Twitter, at Greek Papadon on Instagram, Demetrius Papadon on Facebook. Greek Papadon is the YouTube page. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, like all the matches and promos. Pro Wrestling Tees /Greek Pro Wrestling Tees /Greek God Papadon for all your pro wrestling t-shirt needs that has my likeness and my name on it. So be the coolest kid in your school wearing a GGP shirt because I am a professional. More importantly, hold on. Before I do that, this Saturday, NYWC Wrestling, NYWCWrestling.com, they'll be holding their annual event, Psycho Circus. It's going to be phenomenal. I will be there. You can catch me tomorrow at the Conspiracy Horseman, 7:15 on twitch.tv /Conspiracy Horseman. 4 wrestlers talking conspiracy theories. That's myself, Stevie Richards, Ben Hammond, and Big Sal Graziano. Now, more importantly, you could find the 3 of us at NFO_podcast on Twitter, New Force Order on Instagram, official New Force Order on YouTube. Facebook. New Force Order is the page on YouTube. Follow us, like it, hit the notification bell, leave comments. Let's interact with one another. You can find us on all your social media platforms, like I stated. All your podcast needs, Podbean, Twitcher, Stitcher, whatever. And most importantly, you can find us on our website, www.newforceorder.com, where we have things to sell. And it's not body parts from the ER. What it is t-shirts, mugs, flamethrowers, all the nonsense with the NFL logos. Mankinis that Doc was rocking in Arizona this weekend while he was sipping on his iced tea with his wife, having a grand old time. But regardless of all that, ladies, again, and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another exciting adventure of the New Force Order.
For life.
And that's just too sweet.
Henceforth, you shall be known as the New Force Order.